Summer can be a bit of a slog. For us, it's often for some reason a rather busy time, and I'm sure we're not alone.
Well, you can beat the summertime sadness and the August angst and enhance your everyday with our excellent sponsor, Via Hemp. This is a company that crafts award-winning premium THC and THC-free gummies.
Each of these gummies is especially designed to cultivate a specific mood. Whether you're looking to get relaxed, get quality sleep, get creative, or just to get focused. If you're 21 or older, you can experience it for yourself and get 15% off your first order with our exclusive code MSheet at viahemp.com. That's VIIAHEMP.com.
I personally enjoyed their grapefruit flow state gummies. This CBG and CBD powerhouse really helped me tap into my productivity. Like, we have had an extremely busy summer, and I feel flow state got me over the finish line a few times when I was editing multiple episodes a day, digging through documents, and knocking out a bunch of interviews.
Via Hemp does not require a medical card, and it ships legally to all 50 states. It's also affordable, and even more so for Murder Sheet listeners who get a special deal.
If you're 21 and older, head to viahemp.com and use code MSheet to receive 15% off. That's VIIAHEMP.com and use code MSheet at checkout. After you purchase, they ask you where you heard about them. Please support our show and tell them we sent you. Enhance your everyday with Via.
Have you ever covered a carpet stain with a rug? Ignored a leaky faucet? Pretended your half-painted living room is supposed to look like that? Well, you're not alone. We've all got unfinished home projects. But there's an easier way. Thumbtack is the app that makes it easier to care for your home. Pull out your phone and in just a few taps, search, chat, and book highly rated pros right in your neighborhood. Download Thumbtack and start caring for your home the easier way.
This episode is sponsored by AutoTrader. Credit scores, down payments, interest rates. Car buying can be a numbers game, but you don't have to be a math expert to get the keys to your dream car. Just use Kelley Blue Book My Wallet on AutoTrader. Crunch your numbers and get your personalized results so you know exactly how much you'll pay each month for your car. It's like having a magic wand for your wallet. Presto! The car you've been wanting is now within reach. So hit the road and leave your calculator at home. Find your next car on autotrader.com.
Content warning. This episode includes discussion of murder, including the murder of a child. We will also be discussing rape and child abuse.
Hi, everybody. Thanks so much for joining us today for another episode of The Cheat Sheet. This, of course, is the segment where we talk about different crimes around the country and discuss them. So today we'll be covering 4 entirely new cases. 2 are from Midwestern Lake states, Ohio and Michigan, and then the other 2 are from out west, California and Oregon. So without further ado, let's get into it. My name is Anya Kane. I'm a journalist.
And I'm Kevin Greenlee. I'm an attorney.
And this is The Murder Sheet.
We're a true crime podcast focused on original reporting, interviews, and deep dives into murder cases. We're The Murder Sheet.
And this is The Cheat Sheet, Ghosts and Gunshots.
Well, Anya, why don't we start in our neighboring state of Ohio?
Yes, this takes place in Muskingum County, Ohio, specifically Zanesville. So on August 10th, 2023, around 1:30 p.m., a 36-year-old woman named Deborah L. Frazier called in to police. She needed help desperately.
What was going on?
So she showed up at an apartment which she seemingly shared potentially with her then boyfriend at the Sandhurst Apartments on Sandhurst Drive in Zanesville. And she said, the door's open. Inside looks ransacked. I'm scared something's happened. And then suddenly she screams, tells the dispatcher that there are men inside. There's a gunshot. So obviously,
This sounds horrifying.
yeah, it's horrifying.
This is like the worst nightmare a lot of us could have.
Yes. And imagine what that's like for the dispatcher too, just hearing this, like, okay, this is a bad situation. Now this person's actually in danger. So just a horrifying thing. So then she starts crying on the phone. So she's survived and says that she's been shot. Every officer on duty in the Zanesville Police Department descends upon the Sandhurst apartments. This is obviously a very serious situation. A woman has been shot. There's been some sort of home invasion burglary. It's not clear. And one of the officers finds Frazier. She's like sitting in the entrance of her apartment and ties a tourniquet on her leg. She's been shot in the leg. She says that she was shot by two men who were both, she described as white, wearing masks, who ran out of the apartment as she was kind of there calling police. They shoot her on the way out, then they run off on foot. So that's her accounting of what happened. And what a horrible situation. Also, police also note that there is a .22 caliber revolver lying next to her. She's sent to Genesis Hospital to treat her wounds. And inside, the situation gets far worse.
How so?
In a back room of the apartment, police find the body of 66-year-old Thomas Waddell. Now, Thomas was Frazier's boyfriend. They were on again, off again. Obviously, he was significantly older than her, but he was known in the community as somebody who was always eager to help out those in need. And, you know, so they had their ups and downs as a couple, but this was something that their relationship had gone through that kind of up and down over time. And his body, he'd been shot to death with a .22 caliber, and his body was wrapped in a blanket, a garbage bag, and duct tape.
So that's odd. If you're doing a home invasion robbery and someone's there and you're surprised and you murdered them, why would you take the time to wrap them up in such a way?
Excellent question, Kevin. Yes, doesn't really make any sense. I think tying someone up or something like that during a home invasion wouldn't be that odd. So like the duct tape might make sense, but the wrapping doesn't make sense unless you argue that there was they wanted to dispose of the body elsewhere, but they were interrupted by Miss Frazier's appearance. But other things started to not add up.
Well, we've in this day and age, we'll be talking about this in other cases too. There's so much new scientific developments and technology. I think most neighborhoods today have at least some homes that have like cameras, like doorbell cameras and stuff on their front doors. Were there any cameras or stuff in the neighborhood that picked up any signs of intruders?
No. In fact, the cameras in the neighborhood notably did not pick up two men going in and out of this area or going up to the apartment or running away from the apartment. They were not there. So
that's also a little bit of a warning sign.
Red flag.
Are there other red flags?
There were some pretty extreme red flags actually. Well, around the duct tape used to wrap Waddell, a hair was found. It was Frazier's hair. I don't think that's suspicious. If she lived with the man, listen, I mean, I sometimes joke that I shed like a golden retriever, you know, like my hair, like that just happens. So that to me is not a huge red flag, although it's something to note. But perhaps more importantly, Waddell had been dead for 12 hours before the 911 call. So she did not come in and find him recently deceased. He'd been dead for half a day at this point. So are we to believe that the burglars, the home invaders, just came in, killed him, wrapped him up, hung out there for hours and hours and hours? That makes the story less believable.
The red flags are really, really piling up at this point.
Okay, but here's the thing that kind of like, you know, definitely, I think, certainly a huge billowing scarlet flag. So investigators looked at Frazier's devices and her web history. I feel like my web history probably, given the nature of our work, probably looks pretty bad too. But certainly, nothing's happened in my life that mirrors that.
Your web history is mostly searches for cereals.
That's what you think. Yeah, of course, Kevin. That's right. So from August 5th to August 9th, he's murdered on, or this is all reported on the 10th, but from August 5th to August 9th, Frazier is searching things like how to load a gun, how to load a revolver pistol, how to know what ammo your gun uses, how to uncock the hammer on a revolver. What does .22 ammo look like? Worst place to get hit in the head. Yeah, okay.
It's amazing to me that people still make mistakes like that, because we've seen this sort of thing reported in a lot of other cases where people do incriminating web searches right before they commit a crime.
I think that's because, and I hope I'm not disillusioning anyone here when I say this, but I think a lot of murderers are very, very stupid people, because if you have to resort to murder to like deal with your either financial issues or personal issues, that's really stupid. You're ultimately, in most cases, harming yourself. We have been fed, because you need a good villain to have a good story. You need a good antagonist. So we've been fed all these murder mysteries where it's like some genius, some Hannibal Lecter type who's like a sophisticate and is like intricately plotting everything. But most murders are obviously like people who do not have the emotional intelligence, maturity, what have you, to like keep themselves from doing something that's, just coldly, clinically going to ruin their own lives at the end of the day.
And I think there's something else at play here, too. I think a lot of murderers, whether they're smart or not smart, I think they're not really students of true crime. I think people like us, people who listen to this podcast, probably are well aware of some of the pitfalls that people fall into when they commit crimes. So people listening to this podcast would say, oh, no, you never do a search like that on your home computer. Obviously, you go to a library or something, because we've seen similar cases.
Or just refrain and figure out the gun yourself,
We've seen similar cases, so we know what pitfalls are made. And people who don't follow true crime, don't follow other cases, may not be aware of things like that, just as I'm not aware of how my car works.
It sounds like you're about to start stroking your mustache and saying, that's why no one will ever find out what I've done. Kevin laughs nervously. So, yeah, this was all pretty obviously poorly thought out. And, it's also a classic, you have cases oftentimes where there's a survivor and there's mysterious people who broke in and did this. How crazy, think of the Jeffrey McDonald case. The hippies came in, the woman saying, acid is groovy, kill the pigs. Yeah, sure. So, then I just got minorly injured compared to like the absolutely brutal killing of everybody else present. So this matches that too. Like, I got shot in the leg. My boyfriend got shot in the head so that he could not survive. So you have that kind of thing where it's like trying to use an injury that is self-inflicted to gain sympathy and make it look like I couldn't have done this. Why would I shoot myself in a non-fatal place,
So what was the motive for this crime?
Well, seemingly investigators found out that Frazier had another boyfriend, and that boyfriend had been calling up Waddell, according to WKBN, and pretending to be a bank fraud investigator. And the whole thing began to look like some sort of financial motive, ripping off this older man to their financial ends. Now, very important to note, this boyfriend, police investigated thoroughly. They don't believe that he had anything to do with the murder. They believe that was Frazier alone. But it is important to note that there was that context of some sort of scam going on. And things fell apart very quickly for Frazier. We're reporting on this now because it's been a recent development, but on August 13th, 2023, the Zanesville Times Recorder ran a piece noting that she had been arrested and charged with 2 counts of murder, felonious assault, tampering with evidence, as well as domestic violence. So, fell apart immediately. What happened recently on Monday, March 18th, 2024, was that She went before Judge Mark C. Flegel, and Frazier pled guilty to murder with a firearm, tampering with evidence, and gross abuse of a corpse. And the scenario that prosecutors revealed happened was that she got behind him while he was lying on his recliner and shot him in the back of the head with a .22 caliber pistol. So brutal execution style murder. And so now she's pled guilty. So this has basically been wrapped up, but obviously a very disturbing case, but also one that highlights the fact that a lot of murderers are just not, it's just, again, I really do stand behind. I think it's just people who are kind of not too bright most of the time.
Well, should we move on to our next case?
Yeah, we're going to go.
Oh, before we do, should we mention our sources?
Oh, yeah, certainly. So the sources for this, I drew a lot from the Muskingum County prosecutor's press release that they put out there. This had all the information about the charges and whatnot. And additionally, I went back and read the Zanesville Times Recorder's coverage from 2023 on newspapers.com. Fox News had a comprehensive article on this, as did WKBN. And for the ones that have links, we will be including those in our show notes.
Before we dive into our next case, what were the sources for that?
Yeah, sources for the next one, which is going to be Michigan, are a press release from the Wayne County prosecutor up in Michigan, as well as WXYZ. And those are the two primary ones. I also looked through the court records from Wayne County about this specific case. So, Ohio and Michigan are noted to be, fierce rivals when it comes to sports. So now we're going to go up to Michigan to talk about this next awful, awful tragic case, just horrifying, frankly. And this centers around a 30-year-old woman named Chelsea Renee Duperon and her 8-year-old daughter, Lyla Cassel. So on Saturday, March 16th, 2024, Chelsea called 911. It was very early in the morning. She said that her 8-year-old daughter, Lyla, had stopped breathing. Now, when emergency personnel arrive at the scene, they note some disturbing facts that this child has visible injuries to her neck, face, and head. She's bruised. She's swollen. She's wearing a diaper. And Duperon's story just is not adding up, and it's ever changing. So to back up a bit, before all this happened, before the 911 call, she told her boyfriend, who had asked about Lyla's, visibly beaten condition, she said that she hadn't done anything. Her daughter had been harmed by a ghost or spirit. And for some reason, the boyfriend did nothing with that information because he felt that it was Chelsea's responsibility to get the girl medical attention as her mother. So, yeah. And Duperon's bizarre claims continued after police kind of became involved in this. She started telling them that a strange woman had materialized in the basement of their home and had hurt Lyla. And, this kind of like whole ghost spirit apparition thing. Eventually, she breaks down and admits that she herself hit the girl. And an autopsy revealed that Lyla died from blunt force trauma. So it's unclear at this time whether there were some mental health issues going on here or whether that's just an attempt to conceal and, dodge responsibility. But one thing that seems like a very smart move is that the defense attorney in this case has asked for Duperon to receive a psychological examination. Because if there are those mental health issues at play, obviously that would come into bearing on, trial and culpability and whatnot. But either way, just a very horrific end for an 8-year-old girl and just a disturbing case. Michigan State Police is the lead agency on this. Currently, Chelsea is facing 2 counts, homicide, aka felony murder, as well as child abuse, first-degree child abuse. Judge Brenda O'Leary is presiding. The next conference, which will be a probable cause conference, will occur on March 25th, and the defense is making the argument that other people were in the house. So we'll have to see what happens. But just a very sad case when you see something like this, like a child who's supposed to be cared for being treated in this way, dying as a result. And it seems like there may have been pretty extreme red flags with her living situation that, had they been caught, would have resulted different.
Things like this are heartbreaking when you look at such an extreme tragedy and realize there were off-ramps. There were opportunities where something could have been done differently and the life of an innocent could have been preserved.
Yeah, it's horrible.
Achieving a gorgeous grin from home isn't a total mystery with Bite Clear aligners. Just don't be surprised if all of your sleuthing friends start asking, "What's your secret?" Begin by ordering your at-home impression kit today for only $14.95. Bite Clear aligners are doctor-directed and delivered to your door. Treatment costs thousands less than braces. Plus, they offer flexible financing, accept eligible insurance, and you can pay with your HSA FSA. Get 80% off your impression kit when you use code WONDERY at Byte.com. That's BYTE.com. Start your confidence journey today with Byte.
What makes a life a good one? Is it the adventure you have? Or the friends you find along the way? Maybe it's pursuing your passion while striving to protect, defend, and save what you believe in every single day. So, what makes a life a good one? In the Coast Guard, we think it's all of the above and more, but you'll have to find out for yourself. Visit gocoastguard.com to learn more.
Across America, BP supports more than 300,000 jobs to keep our energy flowing. Jobs like expanding our biodiesel capacity in Washington state and reducing operational emissions in the Gulf of Mexico. It's and, not or. See what doing both means for energy nationwide at bp.com/investing in America.
So, those are the two Midwestern crimes that I looked into, Kevin. Shall we head out west now?
Yes. And oddly enough, for some reason, I chose as my source for a California case, the New York Times.
Ooh, East Coast, West Coast.
Not sure why I did that, but I did. So this one actually starts all the way back on October 21st. A man is just driving in a neighborhood in Riverside, California, around 7 p.m. If you're not from California, if you're not familiar with California, Riverside is maybe about 55 miles or so south of Los Angeles. He is driving in this neighborhood and then he is attacked. Another vehicle pulls up alongside him and they open fire. The man in the first vehicle is seriously wounded, but he is not completely demobilized. He is able to pull himself together well enough to drive himself to the hospital. And by doing this, he obviously saved his life.
That's a terrifying prospect. I mean, anyone who's just been minorly injured, I accidentally had an accident the other day where I cut myself and I felt I was like, Kevin, help me. You know what I mean? To be in a situation like that alone and having the presence of mind to rescue yourself is to be commended.
Not only did he have the presence of mind to do that, he apparently knew exactly where the hospital was and he was able to, he saved his own life.
Yeah, that's impressive.
It's incredible. There's an investigation, and police soon learned that this was a murder for hire, or rather, it was an attempted murder for hire. And they realized that the man who was attacked had been dating a woman whose father is identified as a pastor for a Spanish-speaking church in a nearby town. Well, I guess the town is about 40 miles away.
Okay.
This gentleman's name is Samuel Pasillas. And actually, he is being widely mentioned as a pastor at this church, but the church has made it clear that whatever his role there is, he's not on the staff. So he is serving at that church in a volunteer capacity.
So maybe is he like a guest pastor almost? Like kind of like comes in and does some sermons? I mean, is he indeed a pastor?
He's being identified as a pastor who's affiliated with his church, but he's not on the staff.
Right. That seems like an important distinction because I imagine that church doesn't want to be associated with a guy who did something like this.
But it raises some questions.
Yeah.
Because he paid, or rather he's being accused of paying someone $40,000 to try to kill his daughter's boyfriend.
How much money?
$40,000.
Okay, wow.
So even for a pastor, it'd be difficult to imagine that you have an extra $40,000 lying around. But if you're a volunteer pastor, where does that money come from?
Yeah, that's a really good question.
So yeah, he's been arrested and charged with hiring someone to try to kill his daughter's boyfriend. And another gentleman was also associated with him and also arrested. And that gentleman's name was, give me a second here. That was Juan Manuel Cebreros.
Okay. So that's the accomplice.
And it's also unclear at this time just what the motive was, other than the fact that this man was dating his daughters. So it's not clear if there was some bad blood.
Yeah, I'd be curious, like, was there bad blood? Was there, did they break up? Was there some sort of custody dispute? Did they share a child? Like, there's a lot of unclear there about what would precipitate this. Not that anything would ever justify, a conspiracy to commit murder like this, obviously.
So he was actually arrested. Mr. Pasillas was arrested on March 13th. He's charged with solicitation for murder, conspiracy to commit murder, attempted murder, and assault with a deadly weapon. And also, it's interesting, how did he even know who to go to hire for this?
Yeah. I mean, that is always one thing that I don't understand with hitmen. I mean, I get a little bit, even though it's my job to talk to people I don't know, I get a little nervous, approaching somebody to talk to, like, hey, can you comment for this story? Can you imagine going up to someone like, hey, can you kill somebody for me? Like, how do you have that conversation? I guess you have to kind of ease into it. But like half the time you're probably going to be talking to a cop.
Yeah. So, lots of questions about this remain. And I'm very curious, how did he get this money? Why did he do this? Other the question of why someone commits a crime is sometimes we like to imagine there's a good reason or a good motive.
Or something that you can even understand.
But in so many crimes, I remember a judge, I was talking about a really inexplicable crime with a judge once. This was many years ago. And I told the judge, I can't imagine why he would do this. It doesn't make sense. And the judge looked at me like I was very naive. And he said, is there any reason good enough to explain this? Sometimes the reason just doesn't matter, or there's no reason. And I think that's a valid point. And also, there's a lot of people out there with diagnosed or undiagnosed mental illness. And so often in different cases, I'm not saying that's what's the play here, but often in these cases, there is just no rational reason.
No, and it's like, honestly, sometimes I feel like when people in true crime put too much on a motive, it almost muddies the waters a bit, because it's like, yeah, motive can be important and certainly can be important in many stories, but in other stories, it almost like it doesn't matter. It's like an irrational mind can justify a lot of things to itself. And to me, if this was a personal dispute, I think many of us may have had like negative situations in our personal lives or professional lives or whatnot, and you might have gotten very angry at someone. But think about like the most angry you've ever been at somebody, and then think about like using that anger to then fuel like going to somebody offering to pay them money to kill that, but like you kind of are stepping way beyond like I think anything that a lot of us can even relate to, because like the ceiling is just so much higher, and like the people just take it so far that it's kind of unbelievable to a lot of us.
I think that's an excellent point. And I think probably if we're honest with one another, many of us at certain points in our life have been really, really angry with someone and may even have thought for a moment, oh, I wish that person was dead, or I wish that person was no longer here. But for most of us, those feelings come and they go very, very quickly. But for something like that, you have to maintain that high level of hatred and irrationality for days and weeks and months.
Yeah, the fire has to burn so hot for so long rather than just be like a one-time flare-up. And honestly, in certain cases, especially in like street violence and gang violence, that's what makes the proliferation of guns being everywhere, illegal and legal guns being everywhere, so bad, because like a minor dispute can suddenly turn into a gunshot, a gun battle, because people have access to that. But in other cases, like, so that just takes a moment. But in other cases, it's like this revenge thing. And it's just, it obviously ultimately ends up probably hurting the person who's trying to carry it off more than anybody else, because your life and reputation are ruined forever. And, and what do you have to show for it, essentially? It's definitely, I'm very curious to know what the fallout between these two were, the victim and the person, Pasillas.
I'm very concerned, I'm very curious also about what the daughter makes of all of this.
I know, right? Yeah, I'd be curious if they were together or not still.
Moving on to our final case. This is
north of California.
This is all the way up in Portland, Oregon, and the source we used for this was the CBS News. This case begins a long, long time ago, all the way back in 1980, when a 19-year-old college student named Barbara Mae Tucker was murdered and sexually assaulted. And it is grotesque to mention this detail, but I feel it's necessary because it relates to the charges. It is not clear if Miss Tucker was alive or dead when she was sexually assaulted.
So horrifying.
And so that makes it difficult to know whether or not rape charges could be used in this case. So this case was solved fairly recently. And in fact, a man named Robert Plympton was just found guilty of this crime last week. And he was found guilty because there was DNA materials on the body of the victim that were preserved. And once investigators decades later identified this man as a possible suspect, they saw him discard some chewing gum, and they got his DNA from that chewing gum. And so because of this, Robert Plympton, a 60-year-old man, was found guilty of first-degree murder in the death of Barbara Mae Tucker.
Good. Yeah.
And so at long, long last, this woman has some justice.
These cases make me so, we're talking about irrational anger. Actually, I don't think this is irrational. I think this is totally rational anger, because they just make me furious when it's a case of some disgusting person who values an orgasm over a woman's life. And like, that's an okay trade-off for them. Like, to rape and murder a woman brutally like this. Like she was nothing. Like, she was just a means to an end for him. Like, there's something so, I don't know how people can think that way, but it just makes me so angry, because she had a life ahead of her. She should have been able to live it, but somebody decided, no, I want to have sexual gratification now.
Yes, the world was robbed of this woman.
And
it's infuriating.
How do you fix this?
We don't know what kind of life she would have led if she would have wanted to get married, have children. We don't know if she would have had a successful career, making all sorts of contributions. But all of that is gone.
How do we as a society get men to not do this? Like, I just don't even know. Like, I mean, like it, and just the amount of, I mean, a lot of the crimes that have been high profile that get attention because they've been solved by genetic genealogy and the, you know, the kind of advances in DNA technology are cases like this, because these cases typically have DNA because there's a rape, a sexual assault. So we have the offender DNA. So it's just a lot of them have come to the forefront in recent years because they're just getting solved because of this. But it just underscores how a lot of these murders just take place because of what I just said. And it's just, it makes me feel a lot of rage, I guess.
It's infuriating, and also very happy that this man faced justice, but it is chilling to think of the impact he may have had on other women over the course of the last 40 years. If he did this to one young lady, perhaps he committed other crimes or assaults that maybe were not even reported.
Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, that's the thing. People often think, well, he must have been a serial killer. A lot of these guys aren't. A lot of these guys seemingly do it once. But that doesn't mean that they're then any credit to, you know, society or any, you know, like angels. There's a lot of ways that you can harm other people. And there's sexual assaults that don't end in murder. There's domestic violence. There's all sorts of things. So it's not always like the serial killer type, but it can be, you know.
And domestic violence, in some ways, viewed from the outside, it can be an invisible crime.
Yes.
Because we're not in the homes of people as they're being assaulted by their partners. You know, if a person gets shot on the streets, or if a person claims someone came in their house in a home invasion, the world sees that. But if a man assaults his wife or his girlfriend in their own home, that is not seen. And so that is an easier crime to get away with, unfortunately.
Yes, and sometimes economic or psychological factors might be continuing to bind the victim to the abuser. So it's not reported, or the person can't break away, or they're too scared to. And so it is a situation where that is honestly such a people have such a honestly, like, I feel sometimes true crime should focus a little bit more on that, because I think everyone's interested in the serial killers, because that feels like this could happen to anybody, and like that's true, but domestic violence could also happen to anybody, and it's more prevalent. You're more likely to run into that in your real life, or know somebody who's been through that, than to know somebody who's been victimized by a serial killer.
Well said.
But yeah, I mean, just a horrible case, but I'm so glad that he's still alive. And they got him. I hate in those cases when, you know, the person who's the perpetrator is dead and not able to face any accountability for their actions.
Yes, it is satisfying that he lived to be publicly shamed and held to account.
Yes. Absolutely. So does that take us through our 4 cases for today?
That takes us through our 4 cases. And again, apologies. We had to miss Cheat Sheet last week because of developments in the Delphi case. We had big dreams of doing 2 Cheat Sheet episodes this week. That didn't happen. But at least we are here with 1 cheat sheet. And hopefully we will have a cheat sheet for you next Friday as well.
Thanks, everyone, so much for listening.
Have a great weekend. Thanks so much for listening to The Murder Sheet. If you have a tip concerning one of the cases we cover, please email us at murdersheet@gmail.com. If you have actionable information about an unsolved crime, please report it to the appropriate authorities.
If you're interested in joining our Patreon, that's available at www.patreon.com/murdersheet. If you want to tip us a bit of money for records requests, you can do so at www.buymeacoffee.com facebook.com/murdersheet. We very much appreciate any support.
Special thanks to Kevin Tyler Greenlee, who composed the music for the Murder Sheet, and who you can find on the web at kevintg.com.
If you're looking to talk with other listeners about a case we've covered, you can join the Murder Sheet discussion group on Facebook. We mostly focus our time on research and reporting, so we're not on social media much. We do try to check our email account, but we ask for patience as we often receive a lot of messages. Thanks again for listening.